Good evening, YouTubers. How you doing? It's Jesse again. Just going to give you an update on my Ford Bronco 1991 5.0 fuel injected with a 5-speed. Just wanted to give you an update on that O2 sensor fault that I was getting, or it was a code 41 running lean, which indicates a potential problem with the O2 sensor. So what was wrong with it? In my last video, I had talked about the wiring, and somehow the previous owner or the previous mechanic had wired in an O2 sensor, and it happened to be wrong. So what I did was I corrected the wiring, got the 12 volts where it was supposed to be, and obviously I had the sensor portion of the sensor in the right areas, and so it could feed the computer and properly run the vehicle. So I had hooked up the computer with the belief, or hooked up the O2 sensor with the belief that the O2 sensor now connected properly, it was going to work with no issues whatsoever. So I had started it up, and I did not get a check engine light initially, because when the car is cold, the O2 sensor is really not a portion of the check engine a light that's not actually triggered until the car is warmed up and getting into closed mode, or at least when it's supposed to get into closed mode or closed loop mode. So I had drove the car probably about approximately 10 miles, car warmed up, and sure enough, the check engine light came back on. A little bit disappointing to say the least, and with respect to that, the check engine light did come back on, but the difference between the codes was actually the opposite, okay? And the opposite was that the actual check engine light came on, and it gave me a rich code. So it was funny because, you know, for the last, I don't know how long, it was a lean code. Now that I put everything in place the way it was supposed to be, the O2 sensor then went back and started giving me a rich code, which led me to believe that maybe the O2 sensor was probably damaged, you know, with respect to the backwards of the wiring. So what I did was I jumped on Amazon. I purchased an O2 sensor. 2 days later, I got it back. So if you have a 5.0, you're looking for an OEM style O2 sensor, here's the one. I went to Bosch. They gave me this part number as the one that's supposed to go on to a 5.0 fuel injected 1991 Ford Bronco. It'd be the same for the F150, but it is a 15716. Amazon has it. It's about 30 bucks. Came in yesterday, so I installed it, and I was crossing my fingers to make sure that the light stayed off. If the light didn't stay off, then we know that the issue would definitely be inside the computer signals. Obviously, the O2 sensor would not be switching states, and there would be a reason for that. It could be fuel pressure, it could be fuel related, or it could have been air related, but more likely it'd be fuel related because it would probably be rich, not lean. So I put it in, I drove it, and I did not reset the codes because I figured I'd let the computer figure that out. I did not want to relearn my idle by resetting the codes or removing the battery. So I decided to let it roll and see what would happen. So sure enough, I drove up the road initially and went up the road, probably about 10 miles up the road. The check engine light did come back on once, all right? And of course, you know, in my head, I said, oh, geez, you know, what's wrong? So within a minute, it actually went off. So it seems that the computer was learning, it was looking at things, and it just set it for a quick second, then it went back off. So I kept on driving, went to my destination, and I came back home, and it stayed off. It stayed off for 20 miles, and I was starting to get a little bit more confident that we did finally finish up the problem, which I thought we would, by changing the O2 sensor. And today, I can report that after going back and forth to work 50 miles, my check engine light is still off. So apparently, it looks like that the backwards wiring of this particular sensor actually ruined it. So what does that get me? It gets me a couple things. One, the check engine light is off, okay? Two, the symptoms of the car running. Okay, no, my Bronco actually ran pretty good, even though that the O2 sensor wasn't working properly. My gas mileage wasn't crazy, it wasn't way off. But one thing I did notice was that the idle quality was not exactly where it should be. If anyone's owned a properly running Ford with a 5.0 or a 351, you'll know that that the engine idle should be somewhere around 800 RPM, and it should be rock solid. It shouldn't hunt. The Fords are known for hunting on their idles. So if you had a hunting idle, but it's only ever so slight, there could be a potential that you have a bad O2 sensor for that. All right. There are other things that may cause it, and obviously you probably went through them. It's a TPS sensor, could cause an idle issue. It could be your IAC control valve that causes an issue. But if you've already changed those, or for some reason you know those to be good, but you still have this issue and it's bothering you, you may want to look at your O2 sensor. Obviously, it makes it difficult for us Ford owners is because a lot of us cannot see the data. All right, unless you have a breakout box, you're not going to be able to see the data coming from your O2 sensors unless you backplane it or you get into the sensor and then you go with a digital voltmeter and you're measuring the voltages and differences, which you can probably do, but it is kind of a pain in the ass. But from a symptoms standpoint, you could do pretty good by just kind of listening to it, understanding that the actual hunting of an idle has something to do with the computer and how the computer is going to feed that engine with fuel. And obviously the O2 sensor does play a large part in that. So in fact, this O2 sensor being bad had caused that problem. Obviously being backwards wired probably did not help it. So the new one did help. So we're going to go back to the Bronco. We're going to start it up. I've already warmed it up so you can hear what it sounds like as a warmed up engine with the O2 sensor replaced. And if you had seen my previous videos, you'll see that I went through the code 33 fault, which was the EGR fault, and that fault did give me the code. Now it really doesn't affect me, but what it did affect was how it ran. Okay, so because the EGR system did not operate properly, you will notice that you'll get some pinging. In addition, this O2 sensor, if it's not operating properly, okay, you're almost kind of in a limp mode, and if you're under load, you'll get pinging. Okay, so when you put everything all together and everything works properly, the car won't ping. You can use 87 octane, you can use 89 octane, and you'll be all right. It won't ping if you're in the right gear. So let's go out there. I'll show you how it sounds, and hopefully you learned something or you got something from the video. If you did, make sure you give me a like and tell me what you thought. All right, so I'll walk you through the garage a little bit just before I get out. I have a couple vehicles that I've been working on. One is a 1967 Mercedes 230 SL. I got the motor here taken apart, working a little bit on that. It's taken me some time. It's a little bit of a meticulous job because obviously you just don't want to just throw a greasy motor into this car. It's a very special car, so it's going to take some time to actually put together. My other pride and joy, this is my pride and joy, is my 1967 Cougar XR7, 39,000 original miles, original paint car. Beautiful car. I really don't drive it much is because I don't want to put miles on it, obviously. The paint's in pretty decent shape considering it's original. It's not perfect. It's a more or less a 10-footer, but I mean, with original paint, you're not going to get much better than this. So anyways, let's get back to the Bronco and I'll let you hear what it sounds like. All right, here's the Bronco. It's sitting out there. It's been sitting out here for about 10 minutes. It's about 35 degrees. We're going to go over here and we'll start it up and we'll share it. Okay. Got my stick shift. Make sure I don't have it in gear. Clutch is in and turn on the lights so you can actually see it. All right. So I'm right there at 1100 RPM. The computer's going to look at it. It's going to run at this RPM for a couple minutes. Not a couple minutes, but a few seconds. And it will eventually drop down to where it's supposed to be. As you can see where it's at right now, it's rock solid. It's not going anywhere. All my gauges work, which is a good thing. I just changed all the light bulbs in the back, and I did a little bit of work with one of the gauges that I got the voltmeter was acting up. I fixed that, and there you go. Drop down properly, and you can see it's right there at 700 RPM, not going anywhere. So you want to test it, you can test it by giving it a little bit of gas. Should it hang, if you have a properly running Ford, it will not hang. It will go right back to right where it's supposed to be, 700 RPM. All right, if you have a hanging RPM, there's another issue. You got to take a look at that. Could be your TPS sensor. It could be also your map sensor. You want to make sure that your map sensor is working properly, because that's what's measuring load. And if it doesn't measure load properly, you're not going to get proper fuel. Okay. Again, another rev. Comes right back down. 700 solid. All right, guys, this is my pride and joy. I do love this Bronco. I don't know why, but it is a car that I've loved for a long time, and I will continue to love it and work on it and bring it back to what it should be like when it was brand new. This has been a long journey for me. I mean, I do work on cars a lot, but I'll tell you, the old Fords are a little bit challenging. It's because OBD1 is not quite as easy. You just don't get the same amount of data out of these as you would a new car. But with a little patience, you can get it knocked out. You can get it fixed. You don't have to get frustrated. You have the internet, ask questions, get it fixed, and keep them running. You guys have a great night. Bye.